quote my favorite line from that classic Christmas movie, Gremlins. Well, gang, it's been a rough night for Rockin' Ricky. Yes, indeed. My wife's car blew up. The engine, not literally blew up, but the engine is shot because it was losing oil. No check engine light comes on. No warning, no smoke, nothing. She thought it was a dead battery. I should be that lucky. No, 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 no. Engine blows up. No warning whatsoever. I think we're under warranty, which would save moi thousands of dollars, but that is unsure at this point. So cross your fingers for me, guys. Otherwise, I got to make a couple of pretty good scores. Welcome into the dungeon. I am Mark Patterson, doing what I used to do when I worked the Mountaineer live feed as an in-house handicapper. I'm going to break the races down between races, kind of go back and forth with you guys in the comments. Glad you could get with me. Just to lay out the ground rules. I'm not a tout. It's not a tout show. I don't put selections up there. Nothing of the sort, but you're going to know how I feel about a race when I'm done talking about it. And when I'm planning to make a wager, I'm going to make that clear to you guys as well. No rain today. Lots of rain day before yesterday, so still off the turf at Mountaineer. That means all 8 races to be contested on a fast mountain main. So obviously, we can expect some scratches. So we call roadside assistance. Can't even get a human voice for like 45 minutes. They will give you an incredible runaround trying to keep from doing anything on your behalf. And she pays them. Good. At which point they say, if you want to request a tow. No, I'm not requesting shit. I'm ordering a tow. We pay you people to be members of roadside assistance. Request? Request is when you ask for a specific song at a concert. Request is when you ask the chef to whip you up something special in the dining room. Request is not the word when you pay freaking roadside assistance to come in a timely manner and save your ass. I am ordering a tow, not requesting. Thanks for bearing with me during my rant, guys. Man, did that piss me off. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Everything on dirt. It looked to me like last night, perhaps just a little vestige of Wednesday's anti-rail bias might have been in play. I'm not real sure about that. It certainly wasn't as strong as it was on Wednesday, not nearly as pronounced. Whether or not it was actually active out there, a matter of judgment. I'll leave that to your good judgment out there, guys. But it did seem like a disproportionate number of winners were buffered well out from the inside. Maybe that's just how some of those races played out. Because it's easy to confuse a race that shapes up for somebody to come from behind and come around them with an anti-rail bias. So there's that. 1 mile for the first race. This is an open $5,000 claimer, and we have just 5 to the post in this affair. And in my race flow notes, and I'm not even sure that I'm going to pick this horse or bet this horse, but I want to pop it up there. Yeah, with any semblance of opposing speed, scratched, certain favorite, He's a Shooter, looks a tall order for these foes. He's a Shooter, knows how to win 11 scores, a 2 in a row, and last time ran a towering for this kind of competition, 70 bar speed fig. When he wins, it's not usually close. He's a Shooter. Doesn't win all the time, can go off form. Occasionally, He's a Shooter, and not all that durable. Just 5 starts last year. We're already on the 4th start this season. He's a Shooter. He's not a machine. He's a flesh and blood creature, but he's in rare form right now. And when you give him a soft lead, he takes it to the house, it seems like. That's his MO. He's a Shooter. And there were a couple of speeds in there that could have at least troubled him, probably not topped him, but could have inconvenienced him through the earlier mid stages. And they have all defected and run away like party guests at a Vincent Price haunted house movie. So He's a Shooter, controls the pace, which at first glance, I'm thinking, and when I posted this race flow note, this is a ticket to ride for He's a Shooter. How in the world are they going to beat this horse? And then I started looking more closely at the 8 horse, Self-Taught. Now, I think the knock here is obvious. Now, we have 3 11-time winners in this well-accomplished field. Eric, the 3. He's a Shooter, the 7. And Self-Taught, the 11. And Self-Taught far exceeds the other pair of 11-time winners in career earnings. He's had a lot more class than these horses, which doesn't really matter a whole lot tonight, except sometimes Juan Pablo Silva, especially when he's got the quote unquote hot hand, can resurrect these back class horses. And a couple of his runners last night ran right off the screen to victory. So right now, the notoriously streaky Silva is in a pretty strong zone. So I would not be surprised for Self-Taught to run better than he did on the 5th of July when He's a Shooter beats Self-Taught by 4.5 lengths. He's a Shooter, had soft fractions. They're the same situation here, but there could be a couple of differences tonight. For one thing, I think Self-Taught absolutely hates wet footing. Check out his wet track record. It was sloppy last time when He's a Shooter spanked Self-Taught. And Self-Taught is just one time in the money from 6 wet track tries. And that was a third place finish last time, a fairly well beaten third. So he's got to be better on dry terra firma, which he gets tonight. And I checked out some of his previous slump and mud efforts, and he's losing them by like 20, 25 lengths a pop. So this is the proverbial horse that can't stand up and slop or won't run if they spit on the track. And that can make a big difference. And also on July the 5th, He's a Shooter in addition to that soft lead and the kind of footing that Self-Taught probably loathed had a pro speed bias in his favor. Just check my bias notes from the Dungeon, my website. And on July 5th, 5 of the 8 races went to the first call leader. And only one of those first call leaders was favored. Only one of those winners was favored. So there was a potent pro speed bias in play that had to enhance He's a Shooter at least a little bit. And I think the slop helped him as well. So I wouldn't be real surprised. Whereas at first blush, as I said, He's a Shooter looks like really obvious, just painfully obvious, and a horse you don't want to bet against and maybe want to figure out how to leverage on top and some verticals and maybe sideways in the daily double. But the more I look, the more I think it could still be a horse race, even with Self-Taught behind the 8 ball in terms of tactics. Because once again, big key to this race, there were like 3 speeds in here, aside from He's a Shooter. And they have all defected. They're all gone. Bye-bye. Number 2, Eric, the other 11-time winner in here, scored a starter optional on May the 12th there. I think he was fitter than some of the competition. The 2-3 finishers, I think, were coming back off the bench there, which is tough to do at a route over the mountain main. So we kind of caught those horses not quite ready for prime time. He is not really a starter optional horse, Eric. He is more in line with the night's $5,000 tag. No, he wins on July the 8th. Okay. And on the surface of things, that was a deep field. His big heavy boy Anthony Ferrier had a couple of recent claims in there and looked capable of firing. And that horse thought for Alejandro Gomez went out and got a soft lead. I think the last time that happened for him at a route on conventional dirt, he won by like 20 lengths, literally. But it didn't exactly play out the way you think it did when you look at the fractions in the competition. For one thing, the big heavy boy horses who came on for some minor placings really didn't fire, I didn't think. And again, this is a point I made last night and maybe the night before as well, the previous race card. It's not always about field strength, ostensible field strength, what they look like on paper going in, as much as who fired, who really ran. I'm not sure anybody really ran anything close to their best race when Eric beat them with a good ground-saving ride, surprisingly or not, under the obscure far into the jocks room pilot, Renzo Diaz. And also, you would never expect the likes of Thought to go out there at an Arabian clip up top and still stop, but he did pull up the video and he came back to his field there. So I would say Eric, of the 3 11-time winners in here, I would rate him the least likely to come back and win again, even though, again, at first examination, Eric's last win looks good. It looks like he beat a good field, and it looks like he did it against the flow of a very soft pace, but I'm not sure that's really what happened there. Just my 2 cents worth. Number 1, Align. Another horse is going to take some support. Bernardini scratched somebody else and will run Align. Align has one going a distance of ground. Sometimes he tends to hang a little bit, though, when he goes the 2-turn thing. And I thought that his race before last was closer friendly when he beat a far lesser field than this. And then he comes back at his next one and is surprisingly alert out there. was aligned. So he's really sharp right now and could get some kind of position from the inside. I just don't think he's good enough off his last couple of races. And I'm not so certain that he really wants to go a full route of ground quite as much as he likes 6 furlongs. Now, don't be completely fooled by that 0 for 4 record because that's at a mile when DRF says at the distance because he's a resounding winner at a mile and a 16th, which is a 3-turn trip, obviously requiring more stamina on his Charlestown Pass performances. And now we come to is I'm going to slip on over and check the odds out while we keep talking about this race, which I'm more and more intrigued by this race. And number 3, Secret Agent Man, but that's one rocking good tune. Johnny Rivers, Secret Agent Man. Secret Agent Man comes from Thistledown and wins time before last. It seems like when he wins, though, he's got a condition in his favor and maybe beats lesser horses than he faces here. Now, Nestor Rivera is live with his invaders this year, and it looks like maybe Batista hopped off the one horse in favor of Secret Agent Man, but part of that reasoning could be with his 40 mounts that he's procured from Rivera over the last couple of seasons. He wants to keep that seat warm for Mahoning over the cold weather months because he's one of the rare, in fact, maybe the only mountaineer jockey that can go over to Mahoning and actually make money over the cold weather months. It seems like Secret Agent Man runs better when he's allowed to drop back a little bit early, but it won't take a lot to sit second or third here to He's a Shooter because He's a Shooter looks like total controlling speed. He's a horse that rates very kindly and won't go any faster than he has to up top. And I think maybe a line and Secret Agent Man might be up for some good position trips. So wouldn't be shocked by Secret Agent Man. But this race is tougher than maybe Rivera would have expected when he went to the entry box. So again, my take on this race, and I do like Doc B in the second race, just looking a little bit ahead there if you're thinking daily double. My take on this race again, on my first time through, and this wasn't until very late in the day, but the scratch is already in, by the way, because again, it was a rough night for Rockin' Ricky, guys. But my first time through, I thought, geez, free lunch for He's a Shooter. But the more I look at number 8, Self-Taught, and some circumstantial factors from that He's a Shooter win last time, the more I'm thinking the 8 horse has a chance to beat He's a Shooter here. Good luck, whatever your thoughts on the race. Just to toss another thought in there, I like to give pros and cons on every contender, guys. You know how I roll. And Self-Taught, if you want to knock the horse, it's not too difficult. He was claimed at 20 cents on the dollar from maybe the sharpest owner in captivity, Robert Cole. And when Cole drops him down at that kind of price and knows that he's not taking the horse back to the barn, his trainer will not, then he's ready to wash his hands of that horse. And a horse is claimed on the class drop at really short odds much more often win than they go on to make any money for the claimants. So I'm not sure the future is all that rosy for Self-Taught, but the future could be tonight. As I said in the pre-race, when I first glanced at that race about an hour and a half ago, I almost got sucked in on the C70 Buyer Speed Fig, C Lone Speed, run to the windows. And then I took a deeper look and thought, not that simple at all, because He's a Shooter had a extremely speed favoring track in his favor last time when he beat Self-Taught. And Self-Taught loathes wet footing, and it was really sloppy. And plus, Juan Pablo Silva is in his zone right now, which he was not when Self-Taught suffered at the hands of He's a Shooter last time. So the more I looked at it, the more I thought He's a Shooter would turn the tables on, how Self-Taught would turn the tables on fellow 11-time winner He's a Shooter. And I bet accordingly. Really disappointed in the price, though. Man alive, 8-5, 8-5. I've got to take on Self-Taught there. Give me 5-2, 5-2. I can accept, but 8-5, I'm just not feeling it. I don't think it's any secret that when I did the Mountaineer feed, that I used to move the board. I used to move the tote board a lot. As a matter of fact, there was a time when I couldn't clear my throat about a 5-1 shot without the horse flipping 5-2 or even 2-1. And you know what I've come to kind of suspect? Maybe this is a little self-centered, a little bit narcissistic, but I think in some instances I could still be moving the tote board a little bit. I think that some of the big movers and shakers, the independent operators, not the computer guys, that largely manipulate the board any place in America now, but there are some independent operators, some very smart lone wolves that bet big into the win pool at Mountaineer that used to consult me in the afternoons and used to watch and wouldn't make a big bet unless I was somewhat in concurrence. And I got a feeling they've crept into view with this feed and could be moving the board a little bit based on what I say. Could be totally mistaken about that. Could be really wrong, but it would not be unprecedented because I used to move the tote board in Mountaineer like you wouldn't believe. And I just assumed in the era of computer-assisted wagering and my influence on the tote became less and less and less last couple of years at Mountaineer. And since I left there and now go forth to a much more limited viewership, that I could no longer move the board. But I'm not sure that's 100% true. I'm really not. I'm a little bit curious when I see that horse go 8-5, although you do have to pay a tax with a live silver horse because he's got a built-in fandom. I don't think the word gets out when he is going to have a big night. And his horses are all going to run right out of the bridle. Second race was supposed to be 7/8 on the turf. And thanks for showing up, guys. Anthony, my man, Tom Kurtz, Michael, Kenny Neely is in the house. Ho-Jin Lee, welcome, my good man. D-Rest, back for more after showing up last night. David Pittman, Steve Majewski, Bombs Away, Bob Grant. Always good to see you, dude. Andy Schnell, good friend of mine. Scott, welcome in, Scott. If I missed anybody, apologies. Appreciate you guys making the scene very much. Second race, flip it to 6 furlongs on the dirt. This field of $15,000 claimers, which have never won 3 races. And I think the changeover, the El Switcho, definitely hurts the 3, the 6, and certainly the 7, and maybe even a little bit the 1. So the big winner on this surface switch has got to be the connectors of number 2, Doc B. Eric Reed loves to get him on the grass, but I've often said he loves the turf, I think, more than the turf loves him. And Doc B had never even been on the grass and comes off a snappy win with a big speed fig last time out at Belterra. And that was kind of impressive, I thought, there on June the 18th. The horse gets off slowly and still does that. And I'm thinking back, and I think I checked it out and pulled up the company lines in this horse's last race. I'm going to revisit them very quickly here. I think that was not such an easy race to dominate the way that Doc B dominated. He was 6-5, but he wasn't the favorite. As a matter of fact, the favorite in that race, and I'm checking it now as we speak, was First Act, who finished 3rd. And First Act, the other favorite, controlled the pace there. And that's on the heels of a near 10-length win in his previous maiden special weight. And then comes back in his next to be beaten just a half length, a competitive half length after speed fighting and a straight up allowance race. So that's a good horse that he beat, that he mowed down. the absolute favorite there, who enjoyed control of the pace out there, the third finisher from Doc B's last race. So that was bona fide and then some for Doc B. If you're looking for a knock, he's 5 years old. He's only run 8 times. So he's just not that durable. He only started 4 times in 2025. But you can't always judge an Eric Reed horse by their apparent durability because he's so extremely patient. It's one of his virtues as a horseman. And Doc B looks like he's going to take a whole lot of beating here now. I'm just a little bit puzzled, a little tiny bit. If this horse is A-OK off that superlative performance, and he has won at Mountaineer before, by the way, then I wonder how come Eric Reed hasn't sniffed out an A other than for Doc B and protect him instead of right back for the same tag that he just mowed him down for last time, because neither of his wins was a straight-up allowance, so he's eligible for A other than. Now, that might be taking a really deep dive and look at it, psychological factors that don't come into play here. But it's something that I would think about a little bit before I bet the ranch and the kids' lunch money and all that stuff on this race. 8-5. I got a freaking take on self-taught. You got to be kidding me. You got to be joking me. How does the CAW not come down on He's a Shooter off that resounding win? His obvious lone speed. Big number last time, 11 scores to his credit. And I wonder, too, if something that I threw out there before the opener might be in play. I wondered if the rail was all that good last night. I don't think so. It was certainly dead, very dead on Wednesday. And maybe just some slight lingering of that trend last night. And who knows tonight? There could have been some bias in play there when self-taught comes to He's a Shooter and blows that one's doors off. So we'll see as the card progresses. Mentioned is the horses that lose here. Not necessarily lose the race, but lose some of their chances when this race flips over to dirt. Monje Solea, the 3, who's got a lot of speed, ran 5/8 the last couple of times and romped front-running fashion on the turf off the bench there. And that was a big improvement over his late efforts last season. Now, it might be easy to think he's way better on turf, and it seems like it from his comparative speed figs, but he's also been a dirt winner. And I'm looking back, and he was actually second to Trigger Point in an allowance on dirt and kind of fought for the lead back and forth in that one. So he's not completely defenseless on conventional dirt, Monje Solea. And if he separates early and gets loose up top, then they're certainly not going to be kicking any of that stuff back at him, which he doesn't seem to like as much as he likes turf. Little Red Baudet, another horse who seems to prefer turf. He's got a grass pedigree, Little Red Baudet, and ran an amazing race on June the 16th, his first look at the lawn, because he did this funky thing where he almost pulled himself out of the race. The jock almost gave it up and went to the outside fence and then decided to run. Still very wide for him and is mowing him down, just flying late. Comes back at his next one, no speed again, but it's not easy to get up from 6 lengths back, 8 lengths back at second call, going 5/8 on the turf course. That's not how 5/8 races profile on Mountaineer's lawn. Now, this horse is a dirt winner and was in front running mode when he was in a couple of really speed-loaded races with Pupil and Blistering there in November and January at Mahoning. So those aren't bad efforts in front running mode on dirt for Little Red Baudet. If he still got that kind of speed, flipping back to 6 furlongs on dirt, I don't think he'd be completely out of the question here. And the 2 horses, just so painfully obvious. He's 4-5, and the price could well go down. I put him out there as my likeliest second race winner before the opener even transpired there. Analyst, the 1 horse, I don't think he's as good on dirt as he is on turf, even though both of his wins have been on dirt. Analyst, his numbers are better on turf. He's got better company by far on turf and really struggled to win his 2 life condition on dirt with not an impressive speed figure, and that was a cheaper claiming price than this. So I don't like this horse sprinting on dirt, even though both of his wins have been on dirt. Skipping down that, a number 7, Tool Pusher. Tool Pusher was second to a really good horse, one of those Shane Myers turf specials on June the 21st there. It was a good performance, even though he hung on the late stages there, Tool Pusher. You look at a record like his, and he came in, I think, 2 for 27 with some minor placing. Sometimes that kind of a box score says a horse likes to make a move and not sustain it. So I'm not all against the cutback in distance with him. I think he has sprinted before and done so successfully, tool pusher. But the dirt would be the thing because he hadn't really shown a lot of indication that he's anywhere near as good on dirt as he is on grass. Number 7, tool pusher. He's going to drop back early here. Tool pusher, who is scratched. My bad. Apologies. Okay. I'm the analyst that gives you more. I talk about horses that aren't even going to run. And now 3 to 5 on Doc B. I should have bet a couple of daily double tickets using Doc B in the second race. I did not. I stuck to a win bet on the outside horse in the open because little did I suspect what was going to happen to the price there. And you can't see anybody's past posting there or watching the first 100 yards because of the first 100 yards you see, you're probably going to bet he's a shooter. So there's that. But anyways, I'm not alive in the double, nor am I in any big hurry to accept 1 to 2 on number 2, Doc B, who is the likeliest winner here. A race key I would keep an eye on. Does Little Red Bodette still have speed of the 6 furlong sort, even though he was sluggish from the gate his last couple of starts at 5/8 on the turf? At least they caught that mistake in the Mountaineer video room after about a furlong and a half, huh? Little Red Bodette learned how to pass horses and close, and I guess he liked it at 5/8 on the turf. Different deal to do that at 6 panels on dirt. The horse had some dirt propers, had won on dirt early in his career, and had been in some tough fields on dirt. I think I mentioned that as well, with the likes of Pupil and Blistering, and didn't know what to expect from him a whole lot. The money knew what to expect. He was 8-5, solidly installed as second favorite. Nobody was going to go chalked over Doc B there. And Little Red Bodette, snappy performance there, strong effort from Little Red Bodette, and coming off those 5H turf races, we found him really sluggish in the early stages and closing against the grain of 5H turf races were kind of impressive. Who knew if they would transfer back over to dirt? And they did, and more for Little Red Bodette there. And the public had that doped out, or the computer guys, or whoever, the Lone Wolf private operators that I alluded to. My man Lyrics mentioned that having a hard time hearing me tonight, and I need my tech guy to come in and adjust my microphone. But let me know if I'm better positioned here for you to hear me, please, in the comments. Let me know, guys. I can move it around a little bit here, a little bit there for tonight. My man Anthony says, love the Pirates hat. Yeah, I'm a big Bucko fan, man. Love me some Buckos. And you know what? I didn't get dressed for the occasion tonight. Apologies, guys, because I was running all day and in a state of dishumor. Never did get to work out. I really wanted to, but I never had time. So I really didn't even put on a respectable shirt tonight. Just I'm a hoodie and ball cap guy, cargo shorts, Skechers slip-ons with no socks all summer long, baby. And if it gets really hot, I'll maybe toss on a Hawaiian shirt or a T-shirt or something like that. I'm not a clothes horse. The old ZZ Top song, Every Girl Crazy About a Sharp Dressed Man, that explains a lot about the ladies' historic lack of interest in me when I was younger, because I was not a sharp-dressed man. The third race was supposed to be 7/8. Let me know if you guys can hear me better, please. I moved the mic a little bit. Hopefully this is going to work. This one flips over to 6 furlongs on dirt, A other than our 15,000 claiming. And we're down to just 4 starters, huh? And only 2 of them really have a chance, I think, to be practical about it. Although, raised the possibility a couple of times of a negative real bias, and Little Red Bodette maybe supports that theory. Although the way he just swooped on him, sometimes when the horse is behind the pace, swoop quickly around that all-important far turn, which is when the bias really begins to kick in, because that's when fatigue kicks in. And it's when horses are asked to run and make their moves. And you saw that pattern in the first race when Self-Taught caught He's a Shooter in a matter of several strides. And then in that race, Little Red Bodette just engulfed those horses, although not a large sample size so far to choose from, to determine anything from. And also, Monje Soleil kind of fought back along the inside and tried to be second, even after being displaced early by an aggressively ridden Doc B. I'm going to make the pitches here first before we get to the horses that I do think have a shot. Captain Creed, I've never even seen him attempt a sprint, maybe 7/8 at Charlestown. Now and then. His last race on dirt was a hard-fought win over the aging, high-rolling dude in a non-winner and 6-month race. And I've never seen him sprint. I think he's outclassed. I don't think he's a sprinter at all. Number 5, Captain Creed. Number 4, Blind Eye. I'm surprised that Blind Eye, and I guess a lot of folks went to Prescott and won a $25,000 claimer after taking that inflated 2-lifer at the mountain with, I thought, the race flow in his favor on May the 17th. But that race is looking better and better because Hot Wings came back to score a couple of times later. Bosley came back to do what Bosley usually does on turf and went big in his next outing. And a Blind Eye went on the road, took a field trip to Presque Isle, and runs lights out on synthetics. But his last 2 races are both 2 turns, and they're not dirt. And in the world I inhabit, it's really unlikely that Wendy Uhas, not a knock on her, but that she's going to win 3 races in a row at 3 different distances, and that this horse could cut back to 6 on dirt and beat Standard of Proof and General Mathis. I think it pretty obviously comes down to the 1 and the 2. I prefer the 2 General Mathis. I think he's sexier. I also think he's got more of a turn of foot through the mid stages, can quicken in a manner that Standard of Proof probably can't. So whereas Negron might be handcuffed along the inside to straight up send Standard of Proof, who's sometimes been alert in route races, and you're hard pressed to find a pace setter here. So the jocks are all thinking the same thing. Who's going to get the lead? Why not me? So I'm thinking that's going to be the one of the two. And General Mathis was very alert and made a potent middle move when he wins that allowance at Thistledown back in September, going 6 furlongs. The versatile General Mathis. Now, Standard of Proof put up a big number and any other than win here on May the 17th. I do wonder if that race was quite as good as it looked at the time, because when I reviewed the charts, there were a couple of speeds and they're banging heads back and forth. And Class Actor looked outclassed there and was part of a vicious speed duel. And Standard of Proof just had a great trip in behind a competitive pace there. I think it flattered him. I'm not sure the figure was for real. He's not come close to it in his two subsequent outings, even though in both those races, including Thistledown, he did get a competitive pace up top. He got combative fractions that should have set him up and set the table. He didn't do a thing about it either time. And that is maybe an indictment of the way he ran here on June the 28th. I know that was a dirt field. It was a deeper field and all that good stuff. But I still don't like the performance a whole lot from Standard of Proof. And I don't think his big figure is quite as good as it glistens at first glance. And I'm talking about May the 17th there. Plus, Negron might be a little bit between a rock and a hard place down on the inside. I think he's the guy that's got to send and maybe try to capitalize on this race coming off the turf. And I'm not sure the track's all that good in there. Maybe too early to conclude anything about the grain or the bias, but I got my suspicions based on what I've seen, certainly Wednesday, and even just a little bit last night, maybe a little bit. And they're coming onto the track now. And now we come to General Mathis, and they are co-chalked right now at 6-5. General Mathis is going to be the favorite here. Why kid ourselves? General Mathis out of the torrid Shane Myers barn. He runs fit horses and wins with Mathis at 2 turns on the turf, first time off the sidelines. And he's won some other 2-turn turf races off the bench this year too. So Mathis was ready. Now, I like that it's been about a month and a half since that snappy return to competition there that involved the hard drive, because that may enable him to avoid the dreaded bounce. And General Mathis, last year, he wins a 3 other than allowance, not a 3 life, but a 3 other than allowance. I know they were hyobrids, but those are 3 other than allowances twice. And to show his versatility, once at a mile from dead last at the second call, and once at 6 panels after making a monstrous move to hook the leader at the quarter pole. General Mathis, who was also a resounding winner at Churchill Downs on the dirt, on his page there. So I think General Mathis is very hard to work around here. I think he is a likely winner. Unfortunately, I would bet you money, honey, that he's going to go considerably lower than Standard of Proof, this race's other possible winner. When the final money comes in, this horse could be 1-2, something like that, General Mathis. I wouldn't be surprised at 2-5. I really wouldn't. On up to General Mathis. So be careful before you pull the trigger too hard on General Mathis, and make sure that you think at least maybe you're going to get the kind of price that you desire. And again, he's got that quick turn of foot around the far turn, which should put him in good standing here against the horse that I view as his only viable opponent, and that is Standard of Proof. I'm looking back and trying to make a case for the 4 or the 5, but I really can't do it. Sometimes horses that like the Prescal mix also like the Mountain Maine. But when I look at Blind Eye's dirt wears, just not nearly as good as what he can do on grass. And he's going to drop back. And somebody strong is going to be up there on what figure to be very soft fractions. So kind of tough to not see the race that way. And again, right now, some parity in the prices between the 1 and the 2. I don't think that's going to be the case when the final odds are posted. I think the 2 is going to be what they call a prohibitive favorite. And I wouldn't be surprised to see something like a 2-5, really, seriously, out of General Mathis. If I'm wrong and I don't pull the trigger and the horse ends up paying 4-5, then I'm going to kick myself. But he's got to win first, right? And that ain't happened yet. In the great basketball movie Coach Carter, the coach, played by Samuel L. Jackson, asks his bad boy, a shooting guard, Timo Cruz, "What's your greatest fear, son?" Well, if Coach Carter would have asked me the question, I would have said, "My greatest fear is that General Mathis is going to go off at 4-5 here, which is the ceiling." But a fantastic price on General Mathis. And my greatest fear was realized because when he flipped 1-5, I'm sitting here all self-satisfied. I knew it. I said it. It had to be this way. I can't bet now. So then some idiotic 11th hour tote correction comes in that wasn't needed and was just completely unwise to make standard approved 7-5 there. And General Mathis nabbed standard approved in a long, hard drive. Impressive effort, I thought, from General Mathis. Predicted beforehand standard approved would actually be this speed. And an extremely sluggish, scratched, decimated race that had a two-turn field to it. And that made standard approved a lot to beat there, a handful. General Mathis does pull that off, and mainly by quickening around the far turn in the same manner that he used to go on to win that 3 other than allowance, going 6 furlongs in Ohio last year. Nice horse, General Mathis, for sure. 4-5. This horse should have been 2-5, 1-5. Love that movie, Coach Carter. Samuel L. plays a great basketball coach. Which one do you like better, that one or Hoosiers? I'm kind of partial to hoops movies because that was a pretty good hoopster and can still shoot it a little bit. Also liked One-on-One with Robbie Benson, kind of a time capsule with the Seals and Crofts soundtrack from like the late 1970s. Above the Rim, too, with Tupac Shakur. That's a good basketball movie. The homeless guy who used to be a player, used to be a hoopster. When Kyle, the brash young guy who's the protagonist in the movie, challenges him to a game of one-on-one, and they call it one-on-bum. Hilarious stuff. Never have seen the remake of White Men Can't Jump. Because it's on one of those cable channels, like Apple or something like that, where I can't get it. I read about that movie, and they said Wesley Snipes actually couldn't hoop, but Woody Harrelson could. But you can't tell that from the movie because it looks like Wesley Snipes could hoop. Fourth race was supposed to be 5/8 on the turf. Instead, make it 5/8 on that fast mountain main. This is an open 75, and it is riddled with scratches. Yes, I Am Free looked like a handful for this field on the class drop, but he comes out, he gets scratched. Let me double check the scratches because more have flowed in since I printed out my past performances about 5 minutes before I came up on the air here. We got 5 to the post here. The 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9 will all compete. Royski is a 6-time winner on dirt. I'm not all that crazy, wild, mad about the one post right now, though. And Royski might be a little bit overmatched to some of these other horses in here. Good night for Clouston yesterday. Royski lost Cool Cat Mandu on the grass there on June 30th, and Royski, we know, is way better on grass. At least somewhat better on turf, I would say. So I would discount Royski here, even though he's 5-2. Inside speed, not necessarily what I'm looking for right now. And just not that consistent as far as victory goes over the mountain main, Royski. Number 3, Don't Cross Jack. Kind of a strange horse who used to be strictly his speed and then got his kick on out of nowhere. And in a timely manner, because that was a closer-friendly tempo and race shape on March the 16th. He didn't mean it, though. It wasn't for real. It was 10 kinds of red flags when he wins that with a born-again running style for the 5,000 at Mahoning. And then first out at Mountaineer, he's in for the new low claiming price at $3,200. They were putting a for sale sign on him. They wanted to lose the horse. And this time he's in front at the pre-stretch going 5/8 and then folds late. That's not good. That's not good at all. Logston's having a good season, but I think did not claim this horse at the right time. I think he took the bait there on April the 13th. The only thing this horse has going for him here, I think, is that he has passed horses. At least he did one time, and that was at a longer trip, because this race has plenty of speed, as you would expect, in an open 75 5/8 job at Mountaineer, correct? Going right down the line here, number 4, Win From Within. Win From Within prefers turf, so they wanted grass with him, I'm sure. He is a one-time winner on dirt. His Win From Within has been a two-turn horse on turf and has some back class, by the way. I think he won a stakes earlier in his career and may have set a lot of the pace and running the money in a grade 2 race on turf. Might have been a Todd Pletcher charge at one time when he had some class. The 8-year-old Win From Within. He's never passed anybody, though, and he's not a dirt horse. Sometimes route horses, when you back them up to 5/8 and put them in with crazy quick, crazy weak competition, they all of a sudden learn how to pass somebody. I'm not so sure Win From Within's a great candidate to do that. And these horses that used to be okay with running once in a while on dirt in a pinch, but much prefer turf, the older they get, it seems like the more they turn their snouts up. It's the idea of conventional dirt. Number 5, Parade of Fears. Parade of Fears, a three-peat at Mahoning there. A couple of those final time numbers are good, too, and showed some heart to duel and still pull clear. Those 75-4 lights can be tough in Austintown. The problem is he did not bring any of that form to the mountain. I can toss out the turf race. Maybe he didn't like the stuff. But as a 5-2 favorite, I think he should have made more impact in that ratings handicap on May the 4th. And I kind of wonder if this might be a horse that left his best form behind over the course of the winter months, huh? I'm going to step back for the post parade just momentarily and then touch on Cool Cat Mandu, who is favored here at 6-5. And there is number 9, Cool Cat Mandu. I love my man David Shabel when he says, and this has got to be a one-on-one reference, right, Dave? When he says the 9 horse with a red hot poker. One of my favorite actors, J.D. Spradlin, plays the dictatorial coach in the 1970s time capsule basketball movie. And Robbie Benson could hoop a bit, guys. A one-on-one. J.D. Spradlin's just fantastic. Is this tyrannical, big business, big institutionalized college basketball program coach. And Robbie Benson finally tells him, J.D. Spradlin, I think, tells Robbie Benson, you know where you can stick that scholarship with a red hot poker and Benson throws it back at him. That's got to be a one-on-one reference. That's great stuff, Dave. I'm giving you a lot of credit for that, my good man. Cool Cat Mandu may ram this field with a red hot poker. I think it's possible. Cool Cat Mandu is a 7-time winner on dirt. I don't know if he wants turf or not, but he wins on turf there on June the 30th. Now he folds in his next one, but man alive, that was a speed loaded race. And also, and here's my thing about that one, the track was better out wide and he was pinned down close to the inside in that mono a mono speed fight. So I don't think that race is for real from Cool Cat Mandu. I think he's much better than that one looks, and certainly has no problem getting 5/8 on conventional dirt. A little bit puzzled why long shot Wilson Langley ran him a couple of times in the 440s when the horse can even get 5.5 when he's right. That's a little bit ominous to me, but he's been back to win since then, and then performed in a better than looked manner last time. And I wonder if that 15-length drubbing, which I think was against a pretty potent anti-inside bias, because he was the innermost speed there, is going to keep the price just a little bit afloat here on Cool Cat Mandu. So to beat him, because he's getting the lead here on paper, somebody's going to have to develop a passing gear, right? It is maybe possible for Parade of Fears. Some speed horses who can duel and win a longer distance like he did going 6 can sit behind somebody and come around him at 5/8 and win from within with all the two-turn races on his form. I guess he could conceivably do it also. I don't like Vorisky's chances at all to turn tables on Cool Cat Mandu. We're switching the whole rematch on over to dirt. Vorisky's not going to remain the favorite. It's going to be Cool Cat Mandu. Let's be honest about that, guy. So I'm going to watch the board and consider a wager on Cool Cat Mandu, who I don't consider a lock at all. But I do make him the likeliest winner here. I think the interesting thing is going to be who can maybe mount some kind of a stalking threat. Win from within or Parade of Fears? Or will Don't Cross Jack wake up and revert to that 6-furlong close from dead last that saw him victorious on March the 16th, although I do not like the subsequent drop to that. It was a really negative drop and a big, big red flag from Don't Cross Jack. His connections on that occasion. First front running winner of the night, and I think you got to be much the best to do that. Cool Cat Man Do. I think it was much the best there. Unfortunately, the evil, inevitable tote correction comes, and Cool Cat Man Do ends up at 6-5. Is some of that asinine, insane money on Royski, who had no chance there, dissipates a little bit. Not all of it, though. Too many players still went down on Royski at 3-1. If you liked Royski in that race, I would suggest you find another hobby or occupation or whatever floats your boat. Just had no chance whatsoever. Barrios is a good jockey. He usually beats the gate about a length worse, and sits a horse really well and can finish a little bit too. But aside from being a little tentative sometimes in tight quarters and not being real skilled from off the pace, if you watch the head on there through the home stretch, when Cool Cat Man Do seemed to lose a little momentum in mid-stretch there, it's because he ducked in for a stride or two. And a really skilled jock would have switched lefty in a twinkling and applied the left-handed stick, which Barrios did not do. He just kind of threw some left-handed crosses, straightened the horse up, and then went back to whacking with the right hand, which was okay. He's a good rider, but he's not an exceptional rider because, again, an exceptional rider would have flipped left in a twinkling there the minute the horse ducked in mid-stretch there and lost a little bit of momentum. And that's our first proof positive of my anti-real theory. And I think some of you good players shared it too. Kenny Neely was all over that a couple of nights ago on Wednesday, the good handicapper Kenny Neely. And that's the first proof of my anti-real theory from July the 15th there, Cool Cat Man Do. And I told you guys, you can throw this race freaking the hell out because it's pinned down close to the rail, enter more speed. On Wednesday night, he had no chance, Cool Cat Man Do. So the race was a complete toss. And keep an eye peeled for more of that from horses that were close to the inside and suffered ground-saving trips on Wednesday, July the 15th, when the track was full-blown dead rail. A bias which used to be in play fairly often over the mountain main, but has become almost extinct the last couple of seasons for whatever reason. I've got some theories on it. But again, that negative rail bias, which used to be characteristic of the mountain main. And I did a whole bit one time on the Steve Bick show a few years back on the grain of the mountain main. And also on Night School with my man Jeremy Plonk and my good friend Joe Christofek. I guessed it on that one time when the topic was track bias, although you had to type your answers in. And I was on a slow computer and couldn't type as fast as the other guys. So I'm getting questions. I think some of the viewers, some of the fans who wanted to ask me questions about track bias felt like I was blowing them off by not answering, when in fact my computer was slow and my fingers even slower because I was typing like this, you know? So onward and upward, not upward necessarily because nobody's a cinch in the fifth race. Like Cool Cat Man Do might have been, conceivably. You could have looked at the race that way. And you know what's amazing in these short sprints, how often the dominant speed wins at races, all the pursuers, the other front running wannabes off their collective feet. And then the only horse in the race who can ever pass anybody, indeed does that to get up and be second. You saw this pattern play out a couple of times last night, and I made a whale of a score on a $46 exacta last night when that thing of Clouston's that he got the bad test on finally wins at 4.5 furlongs. And the only possible closer in the field runs second, $46 or $47 exacta. And you could have easily had Don't Cross Jack on a short list of possible passers of opponents to wind up second there. I think the last thing I said was, will Parade of Fears develop some kind of a passing gear here? Or might Don't Cross Jack revert back to that passing of opponents at a longer distance at Mahoning to win back on March the 16th? So I'm not sure what the exacta paid, but I probably should have bet some exactas there. Fifth race, nominators in 2026, $4,000 claiming, fillies and mares, 5.5 furlongs. They write these races a little differently than we did when I was at Mountaineer, but I can't go, ooh, poo-poo, we were smarter than you guys, because they're filling races with the kind of stuff that we didn't write. Nominators in 26 is a condition that just gets easier and easier as the year progresses because you're going back a longer time frame. So we always used a revolving date door system. Nominators in 6 months, 2 and 6 months. Nominators in 12 months, 2 and 12 months, 3 and 12 months. because the fields keep taking on a fresh look as horses become re-eligible for those conditions, the longer they stay in the loss column. But this seems to work for them. These generalized conditions, like no one is in 2026 or 2 in 2026, and I can't knock what works. So many do we have in here? I love that red hot poker comment. Let me know, Dave, in the comments. You're talking about JD Spradlin in one-on-one, right? And Robbie Benson came back at him? I hope so. If not, lie to me. Good comment by Kenny Neely. Cool has issues with his lead change, usually late in the lane when needed. Yeah, I think Barrios has issues with his left stick too, Kenny. Because in a paddock, 4 minutes to post here. And the favorite, and deservedly so, is number 4, Girl By, who I think I listed as a poorly conceived morning line price point. I'm going to put that banner up now. Got me a banner. Learned how to use these things. And I'm really proud of that because I'm a tech dullard. I'm an nincompoop when it comes to tech stuff. Yeah, morning line prices, puzzling morning line prices. 5th race Girl By 7-1. 7-1. Don't get me started on a purportedly professional morning lines maker using 7-1s and 9-1s and 11-1s. Just wrong for so many reasons that you guys don't want to hear me reiterate. You guys know that I did D-line officially on some 40,000 races. So I know wherever I speak on this topic. And you don't set 7-1s and 9-1s and stuff like that on the morning line. And it's too high to begin with because, as I mentioned in my banner, Girl By is going to be lower, a lot lower. For one thing, Girl By was in a higher condition last time. I think that was one of those races wherein 4,000 wins don't even count because the winner of that had scored recently and done it well in a cheaper tag, $4,000 race, and was still eligible for that. So the clause made all the difference. The cheaper wins permitted clause made that a much tougher assignment for Girl By last time. And on top of that, I remember remarking that I thought she ran really well because there was a lot of other speed there and a grand setup for the winner who came closing. And Girl By dispatched the other speeds and fought back a little bit mid-stretch. I don't think she won 6 furlongs, 5.5, more workable for her. But how enthused can you really be on a track that's produced only one front-running winner tonight? And we've had a couple of candidates go out there and get their lead and still come back to the field. Maybe a little bit of negative rail in play, maybe not. And Girl By is a grand total of 1-4-24 on conventional dirt. So I'm not saying be still my heart, turn me loose. That was a Fabian song, right? He wasn't even a movie star, correct? He just went to a Dick Clark's American Bandstand after school. He was a school kid in Philadelphia, good-looking kid, and turned that into stardom, didn't he, Fabian? Turn me loose, yeah. Anyways, I'm not singing like Fabian, turn me loose to bet on Girl By here. I'm really not. Almost feels more like a long shot from off the pace, but I can't find that horse. Can you guys? Number 6, Scoot Along. It's going to also take some support back with King Clouston after Stansbury was keeping his seat warm for him. Scoot Along, a powerful winner after sitting close to a toward opening quarter at 4.5 on December the 9th. So it could be a speed force, even cutting back slightly to 5.5, but fronted nothing last time in a race that was originally drawn up for 7/8 on the turf. Okay, let's get that clear. Not a bad performance from Scoot Along, as the winner turned out to be legit, came back to score for 75. But again, that was a starter allowance in name only because it was supposed to be 7/8 on the turf, and there was no opposing speed there. Although I do think Scoot Along could maybe, possibly, conceivably be an adversary early for Girl By, which would probably prove the kiss of death for the good front-running mare Girl By, who's better on turf. Let's throw that in there also. I'm jumping all over the place here. I'm kind of a scatological horse racing analyst, right? Kind of free-flowing, like we're talking back and forth at simulcast, you know? We'll jump back to the top. Jesus Rapide on the inside. Loses by 10 last time, the Bonita Vida. And that was Bonita Vida's, I think, 4th straight romping win. Won like 4 in a row by like a total of a kabillion lengths. Got exposed last night, though, when confronted with a real big girl racehorse for the first time in Larimar. And it was oh so predictable. And I went on and on about how it was going to happen. It did happen. Anyways, Jesus Rapita was in tough last time. I'm not sure that's an effort that leads to a win tonight, though, from Jesus Rapita, who's been flipped back and forth between Shane Myers and Julie Stansberry, and at one point, I think it was Keita Rich's owned, and that's Shane Myers' big owner. And then at some point, I think they washed their hands of the horse and said, "You know what, Julie girl? Take it on off. We can't help it." Echoing Grady's Seasons from The Color of Money, right? When he tells Tom Cruise, "Take it on off. I can't help it." Anyways, I don't think the one post is any day at the beach tonight either. X Gene's got speed, but only a 3-time winner, and struggled to do that with a low speed fig last year. It wasn't pretty against the lowly Bocciabella. If you got to handicap fast, look at their wins. Those are the cliff notes, baby. Don't tell me about when they're glorious in defeat. Tell me about what it took for a horse to actually win. You could do worse than having a racing form compiled of only a horse's wins. I'm only half serious here. But if you don't have much time to handicap, forget when they're glorious in defeat and look at the circumstances that were required for a horse to win. Constitutionalist was a good hard knocker, super consistent last year. Very game for a speed horse. Went over to Dennis Cluley, who's a really good horseman, if not a master horseman. And he just never got the keys to Constitutionalist. And I think the only reason he was so stubborn about not dropping Constitutionalist, including those two non-claimers, was he shelled out $6,500 for Constitutionalist, and very stubborn with his hard-earned money when he shells it out of the claim box. So finally drops down Constitutionalist. I haven't seen much run from this one since getting claimed. Number 70, Isabella Stray. As again, we're jumping all over the place here. They're coming onto the track. The Isabella Stray's up there at 15-1. And over a pretty hot roll last year, won twice and ran second twice over a 5-race span. Was second to Later Days, who's not a bad horse, and was trying to rally into speed-friendly setup there. Just one race under her belt this year. And my big issue is the Isabella Stray got a part of the fall, all of the winter, and part of the spring off there. I get it when a horse races in late November or December and then pops back up again in April or late April. But this one was off longer than Mountaineer was down, which looks a little bit ominous to me. And then came back, didn't run much, but was protected first time to the post. And they tried to class like this a couple of times last year. So maybe some live long shot stuff there with potentially stronger kick at 5.5 than she used to display going 6 furlongs, and maybe not a complete absence of setup. 9-2 on Save the Flag. I could never figure her out. Used to be a middle moving route horse who couldn't sustain, then became a winning route horse and then backed up and proved 6 furlongs was her best distance. And her best recent race was going 5.5. Although when Cloudy Bay beats you, I'm not sure how impressed I can be. Bonita Vita, really good. So those 11 lengths, don't count them all against Save the Flag. I sung this trainer's praises last night with that thing that he drew in to that off-turf race. Aurora's Music or something was disappointed with the effort. So now I got to observe that he's 0 for 11 on the year, but he knows what he's doing. And doesn't this race just feel like something just a little bit offbeat, like the Isabella Stray or Save the Flag? I mean, I can make a case now that we've seen a race wired for Girl By. It was in tougher last time at a longer distance she didn't want with too much opposing speed. But I got to keep coming back to her 1 for 24 record over conventional dirt. And that really doesn't merit 2-to-1ism, does it? So, as you may have guessed, good friends and fellow dungeon dwellers, I shall not, and you can write this down in stone, shell out 1 thin dime to bet on this race. Sorry, guys, had to grab a beverage and be indisposed, to put it tactfully, for just a minute there. The track's not good along the inside, I suspected. So even after the first race, there was one by an 8-5 show that I liked to win. I still thought that the rail did not look real hot. And I think this race really played into that, as well as the outer more of two speeds, and they were on terms there for a lot of the trip. Gets the better of the much shorter priced Innermore speed. There is a girl by Folds to scoot along there, and Daddy is back in the house now. So these horses are running better with Clouston back up than they were. All respect to Julie Stansberry. She's a good horseman too, but she ain't Eddie Clouston. Scoot along, able to survive Speed Duel there when buffered out from the rail. So I don't think it's that Speed can't win, but you don't want to be inside Speed tonight. I think maybe that's what's going on out there. I had a feeling something wacky might happen there. It almost did. Future Flay, 0 for 22 over the Mountain Main, and eligible for easier. And this is an important distinction. Eligible for non-winners in 12 months, non-winners in 2 years, non-winners in 20 years, and went non-winners in 2026, which is a much less restrictive condition, and was able to get second, was flying late, I would say, with a grain of the track, and certainly the race flow in her favor. So that was a bogus performance. Don't give her any credit for that. That was all about the track out there, the grain of the track, and the way the race played out, guys. My man Matt Harmon says, how about a life rant tonight, Mark? Well, I had a rant earlier, Matt. Where were you, my good man? It was the request for roadside assistance rant. When I called in and they asked me if I wanted to request a tow truck. So I'm getting assaulted. If I'm getting assaulted and pounded on by some road rage idiot, pistol whipped by a couple of them, am I supposed to call and say, I'd like to request a police officer? No, I wasn't requesting shit. I was ordering a tow truck because we pay them good money. But that rant's already over and out of the way. So how could a car with 75,000 miles on it, is only 4 years old, and has had proper oil changes all along, the check engine light doesn't come on, it doesn't smoke under the hood, yet it stops cold, good mechanic, friend of mine, very competent, former race car driver, by the way. So I've dubbed him Speed Racer. At the nearby Rock Springs Motors tells this vehicle, good sir, is devoid of oil and the engine is shot. Now, how can this happen unless the people, and in case I want to sue them, and I don't want them to sue me, I'm not going to say who, but they had to not close it up correctly and put the cap back on right in the filter when they changed the oil last time, right, on my wife's vehicle? They had to. How fucking incompetent can you be? Your incompetence on your $9 freaking hour job is going to cost me maybe $6,000, $5,000 to have a new motor put into my wife's vehicle. And I may be covered, maybe not, insurance-wise on this. I hate incompetent people. I was paid to do a job, and I'm nothing special. I sure ain't the brightest bulb in the box, sharpest pencil in the box either. But I was paid to do a job for 36 years. And baby, I did the job. Otherwise, I'm not taking money. I did my job as a racing official. I did my job as a lines maker. I did my job as an on-air analyst with all I had, an adequate correctly. Because this is the result of that. Somebody didn't tie it up correctly the last time they changed the oil. What else could have freaking happened? You don't have the oil fairies sneaking around to drain the oil out at night. The last time she got the oil changed, they may well have cost me, and whether or not we're under warranty is somewhat up in the air, maybe $5,000 out of my pocket. So, Matt, I hope you're happy. That's my rant. And not just against the folks that changed my oil and didn't do it right, but against general incompetence. When I pay a man or person to perform a service, I only have two requirements, two questions before I commission them. Can you do the job? And will you do the job? Nothing else matters. Can you? Will you? Sorry for the rant, if it ain't your thing out there, guys. It's been said that I don't suffer fools real well. 5 furlongs, race number 6, no winners twice in 12 months, fillies and mares. I listed Strike Accord as a horse that's going to go off lower at a lower price point than she has held that on the program, and I'll put that up there right now. Yeah, Strike Accord, just as Girl By, ended up 6-5 or 7-5, was 7-1 in the morning line, and I red flagged that on my puzzling morning line prices banner. Strike Accord's going to be lower than 4-1. Strike Accord never gets fronted. Like one time out of her last 12 races, she gets topped. And we're only going 5/8 in a lowly condition race. $3,200, rock bottom. And she's the last out winner. And I think that was not no winners in 12 months. I think that was never 4. One of the clauses on there. So it was a higher spot to boot. And just third start of cycle, so she should not be knocked out. I don't think it's a negative drop. Do you guys? Has some back class back in 2024, 2025. Should have been something negative into just 5 starts last year. And the fact that the horse wins last time for $4,000 at Fort Erie, yet pops up for $3,200 here. And when it's $3,200, it's almost like a please come claim this horse sign that the horse waves to the paddock. Nor is inside speed what you want tonight, guys. But you're talking about a speed-loaded race. Nobody really wants to pass a whole lot. Maybe a little bit delicious. And you're talking about the horse that's going to get the lead after probably beating better last time and with some back class. So that's our quandary when it comes to the 2-horse here. The 3-horse with her Strike Accord, who was 9-5 indeed. Denali Ray on the inside. This trainer has run 3 at Mountaineer, and the one placing was a distant third. Wasn't real good. I think they're just getting tuned up with these horses off the bench. Don't know a lot about the conditioner. The horses had a good career. I don't want the inside post tonight, especially at 5/8. A little bit delicious. Has a strong second quarter. Does a little bit delicious and converted that to a win last time and actually got by Scream Machine in deep stretch there. And Scream Machine can be a strong finisher when she gets things her way. Came back to flatter a little bit delicious, who's an ugly mover. If you're thinking about betting on her, don't watch video on her action through the lane because it's ugly. Left lead kind of jabs at the ground. This guy's an underrated horseman, Frank Garrett, and she's got an enviable record too. And she's campaigned wisely and with discretion to compensate for obvious issues. A little bit delicious. So I wouldn't say she's out of the question, but she needs the right kind of trip and to make that second quarter move count here. Scream Machine was quite the queen when she first hit town. She's not that horse anymore. Won a lower spot last time and was able to get the lead. I don't know if she can win without the lead, and Strike Accord is quicker on paper. Clearly quicker than Scream Machine. Number 7, Special Note, trounced by Scream Machine last time and skips the condition for this. This guy's horses run backwards, it seems like, in Tiergarden on the outside, 2-1. Tiergarden's interesting. That's her only dirt win last time. And she did that by getting the upper hand on Romantic Jewel, who never wins, hasn't won in like 5 years, literally. So once Tiergarden had her measure in the softest field of all time, that race was history. The 52 bar doesn't really match up with the 10-length margin of victory, does it? Kind of tells you about the complete absence of competition there. Can Tiergarden, from what is probably the better part of the track, concede the early issue to Strike Accord, maybe Scream Machine, and maybe Stalk and Pounce and win? Sometimes horses with route histories can do that, but I'm not sure that I want Tiergarden at 2-1 to change tactics and come back and win again after beating nothing. So the more I look at this race, the less I like it. If I thought it was a level playing field out there and inside speed would operate at no disadvantage whatsoever, I would probably endorse Strike Accord. But given my opinion on the grain tonight, I'm not going to do that. Nor am I going to bet the race. If you can find a better toehold here, and have a stronger, more wizened opinion than I've offered up here, then by all means, I'll root for you. And apologies for the rant if my ranting is not your thing. Workmanlike one, and I think that's putting it kindly for Tiergarten, who almost undoubtedly had the better part of the track out there. Did Tiergarten. I was more impressed with the Bug Boy. Man, he looks good on a horse. In complete rhythm with his mounts and takes a beautiful seat, good out of the gates. And he's got to be scouted right now by some big time agents to go someplace and capitalize on his bug. Well, he still has it. He's a 7, so he's going to have the 5 for quite some time. And I'd be surprised if he sticks around. Not near much longer. Humberto Haldar, who rode Tiergarten to victory, and you can bet that that race was a bitter pill to swallow for King Eddie Clouthen, who's back full force now. And he and Juan Pablo have never exactly been known to hug it out. And that's putting it mildly. Very competitive, those two guys, and no love lost, believe me. So 2 good riders asking their mounts for their all. And I think the post position and maybe the better part of the track made the difference there for Tiergarten, as the Bug kind of coaxed a passing gear out of Tiergarten there to get by Scream Machine. It was not what she was. I think that's pretty obvious, huh? A good race coming up. This is a West Virginia Red Starter Allowance. These are run for 12.5 or less. And this is a stellar bunch, and Abundant Energy opens up at a really short price, and why not? Abundant Energy has taken 2 starters in a row. Abundant Energy. And if you throw out the Charlestown field trip to run 4.5 in a stakes race down there, Abundant Energy has won 6 in a row, and no placing judges have come into play with Abundant Energy. Wow. Abundant Energy, not strictly victorious against West Virginia breds either. This is kind of backwards. What a lot of horsemen will do is run through the West Virginia conditions, and then they can come outside the program and redo in the opens. But Jaybird figured, I'm going to strike while the iron is hot, and he took this West Virginia bred to Ohio and wins a 15 claimer there, and then comes back to win another 15 claimer with a good Beyer fig, stamped himself as a racehorse there on April Fool's Day, and then comes back to win an allowance, and any other than allowance. That is rare for West Virginia bred to do that. 3 in a row at Mahoning with good speed figs, one of them an allowance. Geez. At this point, Jay's got to be thinking, when I get back against West Virginia breds, forget it. They're not going to beat me. As long as it's not 4.5 at Charlestown. I was a little puzzled when he put this horse in for 12.5 there on June the 1st. But I think one reason was that he used most of his conditions in open races there, which is kind of a backwards way to manage a horse. But Jaybird knows what he's doing for sure. But he did get called on that at the claim box. And it looks like he lost a lot of horse for the 12.5, as Abundant Energy has been back to win 2 in a row. And raced aggressively there at 5/8 on June the 21st, more aggressively than is his custom. From the 1 post, Batista figured, I better get busy here. And there was a cheap speed out there in front that was always going to come back to the field. But the race was between Zealous Storm, who was 7-5, and Abundant Energy, who was 6-5. And Abundant Energy raced on equal terms with Zealous Storm through the early stages. And that was the difference, because Abundant Energy is a better finisher than Zealous Storm. So Abundant Energy comes back, and his speed's on display. Kind of a modest opening quarter. He's ridden aggressively there by Batista. This horse doesn't have to be in front. Not at all. Abundant Energy. But kind of had to be ridden aggressively down close to the rail in his last couple, and capitalized on a soft opening quarter last time. But when you do it like that, tooth and nail, and still prevail, it's impressive. And again, he's won 6 in a row. If you toss out the Charlestown race, and tell me the last West Virginia bred that went to Mahoning to win 3 in a row with those kind of speed figs. Just unheard of. If you want to try and conjure up some scenario wherein he could lose this, and I'd recommend you do that, you got to be imaginative and look for pitfalls before you bet chalks. How about this? He goes out on terms again with Zealous Storm. Zealous Storm's got the front running style and ran shorter the last couple of times. He goes out on terms with Zealous Storm and gets pinned down close to the dead rail, and Zealous Storm has the better footing on Abundant Energy. It's one scenario that is not completely implausible. It's possible. But if he fronts Zealous Storm or gets around Zealous Storm with an aggressive middle move, then it's probably all Abundant Energy. And I do rate Zealous Storm as the best shot to beat Abundant Energy, even though it's a deep field. It's not really a 2-horse race. And I'm going to check the odds out now while we keep talking here. Yeah, they're still in the paddock there. And the Zealous Storm has been part of the exact in 11 out of 12. Are you kidding me? And came back running off the bench and tried to come from behind, which is a new trick for Zealous Storm, who's by one of Jamie Pool's big mares, sole purpose. Won like 60% of her starts at Mountaineer. She had this incredible record, a lifetime record, like 11 for 22 or something. And she's been a good producer. So Zealous Storm inherited a lot of that from his mama. And Zealous Storm actually rallies to a good Anthony Adamo, Fort Erie intruder there, who came back to win. Did the horse that beat Zealous Storm, and Zealous Storm's trying to rally. Wow. So Zealous Storm comes back at 20 cents on the dollar and beats nothing, but puts up a good number. But then the real test, Zealous Storm, on paper, figured to outfoot Abundant Energy and get first run on that cheap speed on June the 21st. That's not the way it played out, though. And I'll go a little deeper with another observation about Zealous Storm, whose speed might be more effective at 6 panels here. It might be the speed of the race, whereas you get the impression when Abundant Energy gets straight up sent, it's taking him a little bit out of his preferred game, but he's horse enough to do it. Now, Zealous Storm, I thought, took some rocky steps. Lower turn last time, just before straightening away. Not pretty poetic action. I didn't like the looks of it. I'm not saying it was all that ominous or was going to very much sway my opinion here, but it is in the back of my mind when it comes to Zealous Storm, who was not entered back in 9 days the way Abundant Energy was, and a very likely starter 15,000 spot. Zealous Storm. But from top to bottom, on form, Zealous Storm is the speed of the race and is on the outside of the two main tormentors here, the two main horses that he's got to beat, Out of Sense and certainly Abundant Energy. And that could be in keeping with the grain of the racetrack. Interesting to see how this unfolds up top, and where Greenbridge steers Zealous Storm here, who might have been trying to get out a little bit around the far turn last time, which would not be a hindrance here, except again, I don't want to get too in depth here, but I thought Zealous Storm took some shaky steps, potentially ominous steps, lower turn last time. Out of Sense, number 2. He's 10 years old now, so does his amazing record at Mountaineer count, still 11 for 29? There was a day when he would never lose to these kind of West Virginia breds because he's been stalwart in open competition, man. High 70s buyers, 80 buyers, stuff like that. Starter optionals, allowance optional claimers and stuff like that. So it used to be when he would step into the West Virginia ranks after folks had forgotten he's eligible to do that, he was a cinch. I don't look now, but he's lost his last 3 state-bred engagements. So I think the question arises, is he still good enough to beat the likes of Abundant Energy and even Zealous Storm? I've never liked him quite as much at 6 furlongs as I do at 5.5. Out of Sense, but his good record at 6 furlongs kind of belies that. And Parker's going to have a good shot to get out and around. His main 2 foes here, the 4 and the 6, because Out of Sense is going to drop behind Abundant Energy and Zealous Storm. I see the comment where somebody weighs in that Mac Daddy will be second favorite after Abundant Energy. They're betting the bias if they do that. I would say somebody else said Indian Empire consider a good pocket trip, except tonight a pocket trip's no good because the inside I don't think is any good. Indian Empire is really talented and was outside the program last time in a race that was dominated up front on a soft pace and tried to rally there. And has been known to win going 6 furlongs. I don't like the inside, but he's very likely to swing out and around. But man, is he in tough coming back to the confines of West Virginia breds. Not a friendly circumstance, though. Not friendly confines, because, man, this field is so super tough by state-restricted standards. Mac Daddy's got talent and ran huge last time to the undefeated midnight show who's got a ceiling you wouldn't believe. Marshall Godsey's fashioning this runner into his next kosher cowboy, it seems like. And Mac Daddy comes flying, but can he sustain that kind of move at 6 furlongs? He's another horse who I think likes the first 5.5 furlongs best, but can make a middle move and is arguably out where the track is better with a good win record, 6 for 17. So this ain't a walkover for Abundant Energy, not at all. I'm going to give a little preview of how I look at the last race in case you guys are interested in betting the daily double and halfway care about what I think. And as far as the nightcap goes, I think it sets up for somebody to come from behind. And the horses that I'm going to use in the daily double are number 10, Prime Shopping. And I might even take a backup on Sugar Lips there. Number 10 is a horse I'm probably going to bet on, and Sugar Lips is a horse that I might use as well in the last race. And I think it's ripe for an upset, and an upset from off the pace in the nightcap there. Although Prime Shopping is going to take more support than that morning line price point might make you believe. Nice call on Kenny's part. Good handicapper. We go back and forth about Mahoning all the live long winter in our cocoons as we degenerates bet in the afternoon on Austintown races. Kenny tabbed that horse's lone speed. And yeah, Zealous Storm is very formidable. A really good horse and was the speed of the race, more consistently fast than Abundant Energy. He was really not a speed, but had to be hard sent last time to capitalize on a race that had no quickness, and the time before to try and stay with Zealous Storm through the early stages. So no surprise, they're 9-2, pretty good price, I guess, on Zealous Storm. The Forest might have missed a break a little bit, but I don't think it was going to make a difference there. As Zealous Storm had that race put away and wrapped up, it seems like halfway down the backstretch. Did Zealous Storm, and in response to Kenny's question, is that why they let Abundant Energy go for the 12-5? You never know what kind of bats a horse has in his belfry, what kind of issues a horse has behind the scenes. I thought it was weird that Jaybird put this horse in for the 12-5 a couple of starts back, and maybe whatever it was is now popping up to haunt Abundant Energy, but I'm not so sure about that. Give yourself credit, Kenny. I think you nailed Zealous Storm there at 9-2, and Abundant Energy just wasn't good enough to beat Zealous Storm, who was lone speed. And again, a very formidable racehorse against fellow West Virginia bred Zealous Storm. Artification says, I love this. My man, just remember, the more you lose, the more you appreciate the winners when they come. Yeah, my dad used to have a different version of that. He used to say, it only takes one to make you well. Some days you never got well. Well, that's what he used to say. Eighth race, I gave you guys kind of a preview of how I see this. Never to $4,000 claiming. I hate the speeds in here, and the speeds are numerous. I think they're weak, and I think they're plentiful. Interval is a horse some folks are going to look at first off the claim. Terry Boyd, very selective what he claims, won, and it had some success over the years. It's been a while since he was in action as a thoroughbred trainer. I'm not sure he timed this claim correctly. Interval came in with only a 1-for-24 record, and maybe it was Terry's intent to cut Interval back in distance because Interval seems to tire in a lot of those route races, but is usually out there winging and gets a piece of it. Just doesn't win a whole lot. Settles for second a lot, Interval, and definitely tailed off from some of the races that Terry probably focused on to claim Interval back in March, just 7 days apart. Superlative efforts there from Interval, and that's, I'm sure, why he dropped the slip. So Interval might have a chance to stalk the pace on the cut back here from a favorable post. I don't think he's out of the question. I don't think Raji's out of the question either. Somebody said in the comments, no Raji. I think Raji's got a chance. Raji, 2 races under his belt now and might not have been route ready last time, might have been too close to the pace, does drop in class. I think the cutback might help here, given the grain of the track. And one of Raji's best races was on dirt at Thistledown in June of 2024, but this horse has got to have issues. He's away from the game for a year, runs 3 times, away from the game another 10 months. And they're kind of an X factor here, but figures to trip out well on the far outside and maybe even gets first run on a couple of closures I recommended. Sugar Lips at a big price and Prime Shopping. Raji might be closer to the pace. So both those horses have a chance. Interval and maybe more so Raji. The horses that I used in the double are Sugar Lips. Hate the 2-for-51 record, certainly, but I think this horse has been miscast at a route of ground too many times. He can't run a route. He doesn't have the stamina or the heart. Wants to sprint. And put up a decent late kick the last time he sprinted, June the 21st, huh? And some of his better efforts are sprinting on his page there. Sugar Lips. And I said this a million times. You look at that kind of a box score, never wins, oftentimes second or third. That's the kind of horse that wants reduced real estate. So had no chance last time in a higher condition. No one was ever on the turf, which means you can run umpteen dirt races and still be eligible. So a drop in conditions and a cutback in distance and maybe long shot possibilities if there's a meltdown. Prime Shopping on the outside. So many of the Blankenship horses run better the second time out of his barn because he learns them, I think, the first time he runs them. This is a 2-time winner who cheats the conditions, at least 1 win's worth, and has some good back numbers and might muster some kind of a kick here. Has been known to run late and get a piece oftentimes in those 2-turn sprints at Charlestown. Prime Shopping. And again, I like the off the pace brigade in this race. So the horses I think that could possibly win it, Interval and Raji, but more so, at least for my money, Prime Shopping and maybe even Sugar Lips for an outside look. I'm not going to lay the whole pace out painstakingly. I think it's pretty apparent to you knowledgeable handicappers why I don't like the speeds in there, given the grain of the track. But more so, I think the outlook of this race and the way the front runners look here. So that is how I see it. I may well bet the race. I'm going to hang around and see about that. And we will check out the comments here and bid you guys a fond adieu. I'm going to 2 more cards coming up, right? Tomorrow, it is not supposed to rain. I don't think, is it? No. Maybe it is. Yeah, I think maybe it is supposed to rain tomorrow. So be careful about handicapping for turf. Yeah, I think I read like 90% chance of rain tomorrow. So I guess be careful about handicapping for grass. What a bummer when they come off the turf. I told the story before about some guy, some kind of a stockbroker or financial advisor, well-to-do gentleman, until the racers came off the grass. He was a good friend of mine for the longest time. We communicated via text and all that stuff. And when the races would come off the grass and it was sunny and the main track was fast, this guy would just rip me as if it were my call. It wasn't my call. And he just kept on and on and on and on until I finally, and he would rip on me until I finally had to block him. So I blocked him, deleted him from my phone. So I get a text after I left Mountaineer last year. And the person purported to be his wife and said, I hope you are happy for blocking my husband from your life. He is departed now with the angels. And he did not depart this earth as your friend. Lady, this man called me names I'd never heard of when Mountaineer would take the races off the turf. Rest in peace, my good man. But I probably waited too long to block you. And you guys know, if you used to watch me on the Mountaineer feed, that I would put my phone number out there. I'm not afraid of anybody. I'm 6'2", 290, and been pumping iron for 35 years. And I'm not a pacifist off camera, guys. Not a shrinking violet or turn the other cheek guy. So I was not hesitant to put my number out on the air. And only had 1 or 2 bad experiences from the hundreds, and I mean hundreds, maybe a couple of thousand people that texted me. Only had a couple of bad experiences, people that I had to block. And that's one of the stories. I might tell another 1 or 2 some other night. McMichael and I used to get letters from some dude. And they were friendly at first and then became oddly religious in nature. In his teas, he would draw and fashion a pretty skillful Christ on the cross, dripping blood. And then eventually they were strictly addressed to the lovely Nancy. And it turns out that the guy who put off creepy vibes and admitted to watching us in heavy lockup, how he managed to pull that off, I have no idea. It wasn't a bad handicapper, by the way. Turned out he was a campus shooter. A campus shooter. How you like them apples? In the famous words of Matt Damon. Who's seen the Odyssey yet? Anyways, enjoyed it very much, guys. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate your attendance here in the dungeon. Mark Patterson out.